He's an ardent supporter of former President Jacob Zuma, a former government spokesperson and erstwhile television channel boss who's been criticized in some respects for his links to the Guptas. We're in conversation now with Mzwanele Manyi, who joins us via our video link to discuss these latest developments and many other related issues. Mzwanele, great to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed for having the chat with us here on Newzroom Channel 405. Let's jump straight into it and perhaps reflect on what is topmost of mind for many people watching our discussion. And that's your decision now to be, if you like, the mouthpiece of the former president. My understanding is that they approached you for this role. You obviously accepted it. But tell us what considerations you were making in the lead up to that decision.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ayanda, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think the important thing, more than my considerations or the optics of it, is the fact that what is going to be in place right now is the voice of President Zuma. For all these years, President Zuma's voice has been suppressed. This is a man who the last court that found him guilty was in 1963. So we're practically speaking, talking about a very innocent man here in terms of our constitution, because no court of law has ever found him guilty. But in the public domain, he's been rubbished, he's been made a constitutional delinquent, he's been made all sorts of things. I think the important thing is to focus on his side of the story. Right now, the case is sitting in Pietermaritzburg. And one of the key issues that is raising is that it doesn't look like it's going to have a fair trial. Because the person that is leading the trial right now he's got his hands dirty already, which makes him unfit basically to be leading this trial as it were. I think those are the key issues that we should be focusing on, to look at what is it that President Zuma is saying, as opposed to spending time on gossip about optics and gossips about all kinds of things that are not adding value. Just add value to South African society and deal with the issues and deal with the facts.
Yeah.
Right now,
if you give me the opportunity, we've got so much time, don't worry, we'll get to exactly that. Of course, those, according to some people, are the substantive issues. But I want those matters surrounding that not to distract from our conversation. When it was announced that this is what's taking place, the fact that you're going to be speaking for the former president. Of course, there were issues around affiliations. You know, the former president has always been closely linked to the Gupta family. You too have had those things stick to your name. You must have thought about that before deciding that you'll speak for the president.
What was top of my mind is not what is on top of your mind or anybody else's mind. What was on top of my mind is an opportunity to be the voice of the voiceless. What was on top of my mind was that for once, truth will be on the table. Right now, South Africa is suffering under a very misguided notion that President Zuma is running away from court. They even have constructed terms like Stalingrad terms and so on, and all of those things. And they're saying President Zuma does not want to go to the Zondo Commission, all these funny things. When I got the call, I thought, wow, the opportunity now is to set the record straight, is to say, President Zuma does want to come to the Zondo Commission. President Zuma does want to have his story told, but President Zuma has got a problem with the fact that the Deputy Chief Justice, Honorable Justice Zondo, is conflicted on the matter. President Zuma is saying, as we speak here and now, we've got two affidavits. We've got an affidavit of DCJ Zondo. We've got an affidavit of President Zuma. How is it justice that it's the same DCJ Zondo that decides that of the two affidavits, which one must win the day? That is the issue that has got me to be here to say the time has come for President Zuma's side of the story to be put on the table, and we should not allow distractions to take away the main issue. That's why I was appointed.
Sure. You mentioned two things. You want to be the voice of the voiceless, and you believe the voice of the former president has been suppressed. Unpack that for us. What do you mean by that?
I mean, okay, for instance, I've been having all kinds of interviews. People are never interested to hear what is it that President Zuma is saying. They're interested with the periphery. They're interested about how this impacts on ATM, how this impacts on this. That's all side shows. The issue at hand is that President Zuma is saying he is not about to have a fair trial. And he is saying there is evidence that suggests that the people that are supposed to lead this trial have been involved in all kinds of conspiracies. Some of these conspiracies also include CIA agents and all of that. And what I'm saying here is not information that has not been tabled in court. This information has all been tabled and ventilated in court, but media is not even focusing on this because media has got its own focus, as it were. And I am saying the time has come that let's put President Zuma under a proper spotlight and ventilate his issues and hear what he's saying. And I've just mentioned two things here that he's saying. He's not going to have a fair trial, and he's saying he's been waiting for a review application in court to say, to deal with the issue of the recusal of TCJ Zondo. Those are the two key things right now that are on front of his table, but nobody wants to hear the merits of what he's saying, and people are all worried about all other optics around it.
Yeah, what if I put it to you, Mzwanele, that it's because there's actually nothing new that's being said, even listening to you now. I mean, part of our conversation is you ventilating and rehashing information that's already in the public domain. And so it's outside of being able to deal with what I imagine you consider to be the substantive issues around the former president. There is less clarity around what it means for you now being his mouthpiece. And I presuppose that that's where many people will be coming from in trying to unpack that aspect of what's actually happening.
No, all it means is that now you have somebody that is going to focus on what something that is not considered, what you call it, important, which is President Zuma's side of the story. People are not interested in that. They're interested in all these other things. They say they would, like you're saying now, you say you already knew all this information, but despite it being known, it's not put into context in the media. Why is it that if this is all known, why is it that President Zuma is caricatured as a constitutional delinquent? Why is it that President Zuma today is caricatured as somebody that is busy doing everything to avoid his day in court? Why is it that all of these things are put in a manner that positions him as this person that wants to be above the law, that does not respect courts and all of this? Why do we have that if his side of the story is known? Because the issue here is that if society can be educated and informed about the actual reasons why President Zuma, for instance, would say, I have a problem with TCJ Zondo, what are the issues? Look at the submission and let's deal with that. Let's look at the submission that President Zuma has put in court to say Billy Downer is highly conflicted, hasn't got the title to prosecute him. What are those issues? Let's put those on the table. Let South Africa be appraised with the facts. Let's deal with those issues. That is what we should be dealing with.
Yeah, many people might say that those issues have been put on the table, have been considered, and it is despite of that, wait, I allowed you to finish. It is in spite of that people have the perception that the former president is in fact trying to delay whatever court process needs to happen. But we'll unpack that in just a moment. In fact, they have to do what needs to be done on our television. We're speaking to Mzwanele Manyi. He's a former head of GCIS, also most recently been appointed the spokesperson for former President Jacob Zuma. We'll unpack all these other issues in just a moment. Stay with us. 28 minutes towards 4 o'clock. Lovely to be with you on Politics Unscripted. I am Danyati here in for Xolim Gambi, and we're in conversation with former GCIS head Mzwanele Manyi, who's also now the spokesperson for former President Jacob Zuma. And Mzwanele, before we had to go for that quick break, we're still ventilating what you believe to be some of the peripheral issues and what perhaps you think are more substantive and central. Let's unpack the latter then. Part of what you said you'd want to do is obviously shine a spotlight on former President Jacob Zuma's story. And in that, you said you had information around the spy tapes, I'm paraphrasing here, or evidence that might, I guess, help the country come to terms with what really happened. Are you able to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, first, I think we all know that, there are these legalese about things that are sub judice and all of that. But what I can tell you, the very first thing that South Africa should be asking itself is, for the longest of time, we've been told about the 783 charges, for the longest of time. And when we go to court now, all of a sudden they've been reduced to 18. What happened to all the hundreds and hundreds of these charges? What was the process used to eliminate all these charges? Because President Zuma didn't deal with those charges. What happened to the 783? So from where I sit then, I just see a picture that's been painted of somebody that was put as the most legal delinquent that South Africa has ever seen, to be facing 783 charges. So in the minds of society, you've got this person that has broken all the rules in the book. That's the first thing that the NPA must explain to South Africa. How did it go from 783 to 18 or so charges that he is currently facing as we speak? That's the first thing. Inside the spy tapes, some very serious things that are there that Advocate Mpofu has been ventilating in court. And I think it's important when journalists go to court, they must look into the affidavit of President Zuma, what he's saying there. Part of the things that he's been saying in there is even the language. Can you imagine that in the NPA officials referring to him as a Zulu boy, referring to him as a Zulu bastard, all of those kinds of things, very unsavory language. Now, if people call you a Zulu boy, if people call you a Zulu bastard, why do you think such people are going to be able to then prosecute you fairly? How's that possible? If one of the people that must lead this investigation, when hearing that MJ at some point had looked into the matter and MJ had decided that in fact this is just a political conspiracy, and MJ decided to drop the case, as it were. This one guy that's leading here, there's information here that he actually broke down, he cried, was very emotional about this thing. It just shows how personal this thing is for him. The very same guy is reflected in the court papers that was tabled there by Advocate Mpofu, that he had also written his own affidavit in support of the DA case to review the issues of the spy tapes, and they thought at that point that there was going to be information that implicates President Zuma, as it were, and he participated in that DA case. Yeah. In fact, I beg your pardon, the DA case to drop the charges against President Zuma, he supported that. In fact, he is now acting against his own employer. This is how vested personally this guy is on the matter. This is all ventilated in court and all that. Right. But that is a kind of conspiratory stuff that has been happening there. Some of the information that is there, various opposition party people talking to the NPA people and all of that, it's all in the court papers. And those are the things that when you put them together, you say, but the issue of an NPA that must exercise law freely, without fear, without any bias, what happens to those principles, as it were, if you look into the revelations that come out of those spy tapes? Yeah,
the individual you referenced there is Advocate Biddy Downer. Again, issues that, as you rightly put it, have been ventilated in court, issues also in the public domain. You paint a picture of an NPA that's out to get Zuma. again,
Yeah.
there are all kinds of, call it scenarios that people have laid out in the public domain. Let's hear it from you. Why is the NPA after the former president?
Well, look, again, I'm not going to tell you anything new, but what I'm telling you here is information that is not being properly given to the public.
In what sense? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm going to it. In the court papers, President Zuma makes a point that, in fact, even his removal as deputy president at the time, even his removal as deputy president was part of a bigger political plot, as it were. And most of those things, he's probably going to deal with them on the 19th. I think on the 19th, people must really listen to when President Zuma makes his own point in court.
So would you then agree that there hasn't really been much forthcoming to help the public understand why the former president has said what he said? As you have admitted, this is yet to be ventilated on the 19th in court.
No, the details will be there, but already, right now, what has been submitted in the affidavit, which is public information, is already there. Already some very interesting stuff is in there, and I want the public to go and read it for themselves. And you, as media, you have a duty to go there and look at those papers. Right now, all you've been doing, you've been focusing on the case that the NPA thinks it has against President Zuma. But you, as the media, have not been forthcoming about what Zuma is saying about from his own side of the things. And I'm appealing to you to be fair. I'm appealing to you to be a media that is objective. I'm appealing to you to go pound for pound when you deal with these matters. Do represent the case of the NPA, but also do represent President Zuma's response to these things so that the public is informed. Yeah. What is happening now is a lopsided thing. President Zuma is here to get me to come and say his part because you as the media have been doing everything you can to suppress his viewpoints. That's the issue.
Right. Mr. Manyi, I mean, you have admitted that a lot of what you said around the substantive issues to do with the former president are already in the public domain. If there was such a concerted effort to silence the former president, how would 90% of the information you've told me have been public knowledge to begin with?
Let's explain what public domain means. Being in the public domain means that they are accessible to the public. But the fact that they're accessible to the public does not mean the public can get to them. It means that if the public can get to them, they can. But sometimes it's not everybody that knows how to go to the registrar of court to go and get affidavits. It's not everybody that knows how to go to SAFLI and look at the court judgments. But that is all public domain. So public domain requires a lot of sophistry. In South Africa, we've got a lot of people that haven't got the wherewithal to get into these platforms, as it were. The only thing that people have is the radio. Now, the people like you that have got access to this whole sophistry arrangement are not using it in a fair and objective manner to educate society. You cherry pick, you pick only the parts that push a particular narrative, but the parts that deal with that narrative, like President Zuma's side of the thing, although it's there for you to ventilate to the public, you choose to ignore it, and you choose to talk about Stalingrad. You choose to talk about 783 charges, but you don't spend the time to say, how did you go from 783 charges to 18 charges? What happened? Why isn't South Africa told how we got to that? Or was it just a big smear campaign just to put President Zuma in a corner, which is what I'm thinking right now?
Right. So, I mean, outside of going through the records of the conversations we've had on places like here on 405, I'm not necessarily, I guess, of the view that I am able to convince you that by public domain, I'm actually referring to on-air discussions actually unpacking what was said in court on the side of the former president and elsewhere. But very well, I think your stance has been well communicated insofar as that is concerned. Let's speak about another aspect, perhaps, that is top of mind for many South Africans as you take up this new role, and that is perhaps some of the, call it, remarks you've made in the past around the Gupta family. Part of what you've said is that you're hoping to rid, or rather cure South Africans of Gupta phobia. How's that going?
Well, look, I think you know the State of Capture Commission is doing that very well. I never thought that would see. I never thought that we would see so much revelations as we've seen in the State of Capture Commission, because in that commission, Brian Mulife and Kuku Machela came up with some very interesting revelations. I didn't know the kinds of things that are accusing President Ramaphosa on in terms of his involvement in the ESCOM situation. Did we know, for instance, that at the same time that he was a high-ranking deputy president of the country, of the ANC, at the same time he was chairperson of the war room, and all of that at the same time, in parallel to all of that, he is still involved with Glencore and all of that. This is not from me. This is from the commission. So the revelations that are coming out there, they are opening South Africa to say, although there is this thing being said about the Guptas, and they must be dealt with, and if they are found to have broken the law, they must be dealt with the full wrath of the law. Nothing should be spared to deal with them. But as you deal with them, you must deal with everybody else that has also hiding behind these Guptas, but they are also doing their own shady little things on the side. In fact, not little big things on the side, as it were. So all of this must be dealt with. So I think by that, I mean that the impression is given that they are the only ones that are accused of all these funny things, when in fact the revelations that are coming out of the commission speak very clearly. There are some fresh names that are coming out there to say, they just give you a wow, to say, wow, so-and-so is actually also busy with this kind of shenanigans. So indeed, we have a very rotten country that must be cleaned. Guptas, wherever they have found to have broken the law, there must be nothing spared to deal with them.
Very quickly.
Exactly the same energy must be not spared in dealing with things like Steinhoff. The exact same energy must not be spared in dealing with everything else that is not. I mean, right now we've got a 500 billion, for instance, on the PPE. That it's very difficult to really trace where it went to. We know that 200 of that was meant to be a guarantee for SMEs, but all SMEs that I know are struggling. They don't know where to get, they don't know how to get access to that 200 billion, which was meant for them. Part of it was meant to be the 350, and every time I go through the post office of lately, there's long queues of people queuing up.
Point taken, Mzwanele. Sorry to interrupt you there. I hear the point you're making. The guiding principle should definitely be consistency and transparency throughout. Very quickly, is it still your mission then to cure South Africans of what you called Gupta phobia? Yes or no? We'll continue in just a moment. I just want to get your take on that.
I'm interested in putting President. My mission right now is to make sure that President Zuma's story is told. That's really my mission now. I'm here to, and President Zuma's story is just the truth. He is an innocent man that's being persecuted, that every time when he wants to put his story on the table, it gets trivialized, and other important things like optics and Gupta phobia get put in. Right now, you want to headline with Manyi and the Gupta thing, as opposed to focusing on President Zuma. All these distractions, they are actually so hollow. All these distractions, they are so transparent. I don't know why you think that intelligent people can't see what you're trying to do. You are now, instead of focusing on President Zuma, you want to lead with Manyi and Gupta phobia. I'm not there. Where I am, I'm on President Zuma, and I think you have a duty and an obligation to focus the public on President Zuma.
All right, let's hold it there.
Things.
Let's hold it there. I mean, we'll allow the intelligent people that you mentioned to make up their own minds about that. I'm still in conversations with Mzwanele Manyi as we unpack, of course. He's being the spokesperson for former President Jacob Zuma and many other related issues that he says intelligent people can see through. I wonder how you see it. We'll continue that discussion when we come back. It's about 12 minutes towards 4 o'clock. You're live on Newzroom Afrika, channel 405. This is Politics Unscripted. I'm Ayanda Nyati, standing in for Ngambi, and we continue our conversation with former President Jacob Zuma's new spokesperson, Mzwanele Manyi. He was also the former head of GCIS. And Mzwanele, we're still unpacking, of course, perceptions, your perceptions too, around even this interview and what my objectives are. That's neither here nor there, but perhaps many people won't forgive me for not asking this. When is former President Jacob Zuma going to appear before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry? He had previously, of course, put in, if you like, a prerequisite that hinges on Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo actually recusing himself. Does that still stand? And is that, I guess, the message you are to communicate to us?
Yeah, without a doubt. President Zuma would want to go there, but the only time he can go there and get a semblance of a free hearing is when DSTV Zondo is not on the chair, because of the reasons that he has already espoused, President Zuma himself, about how their family relations tie up, etc., all of that. So biasness and everything that emanates as a result of their background, which he has explained himself in there. So as long as he's not given a different chair of the session, he's not able to do that. And by the way, I would have thought this would have been the simplest of things, by the way. I mean, all you could have done is to say what is important here, what is in the interest of South Africa is to hear President Zuma's side of the story. Now, to be throwing all kinds of legalese into him and all of that is actually not helping South Africa. It would have been in the interest of South Africa, public interest, that DSTV Zondo does the most obvious thing, the correct thing to do, and to simply say, okay, fine, if you think my being here is a problem, I'm just going to sit on the chair, listen in, and I get another judge to hear. I mean, only 3 or 4 days of hearing President Zuma, and thereafter he can then go back to the chair and deal with what has been presented. Why was that so complicated?
Yeah.
You know? So that's all that he's been asking for.
Right. I really want us to also speak about ATM and your thoughts as we lead up to the local government elections as well. But I do wonder, is there anything at all that could change the former president's mind? Say perhaps even a court ruling by the Constitutional Court? I
think President Zuma is a person that wants to see justice being done. And he has fought all his life to ensure justice being done. And it's not about to renege on his commitment to the people of South Africa, because his approach, President Zuma, is that if he is President Zuma, with the kind of profile he has, he can't get justice, and if he is going to allow a miscarriage of justice to be conducted on him, and him glibly accepting that, he would be selling out. That is his posture to the issue. He would be selling out, and he is saying he's doing this not just for himself, but for the people of South Africa, to say that there must be justice. This is what he fought for. This is what he left his family for in the country and went to exile to fight for justice. So therefore, he right now is at the center of experiencing whether justice is being served or is not being served. And right now, he sees another miscarriage of justice. He is saying, well, if I have to go back to the trenches as I used to in those days, let it be. If I need to go to jail for this, let it be, because I want justice. This is all I've fought for. I'm on my twilight of my life now, and I'm not about to renege on this and leave the people of South Africa in a lurch.
I hear you, and
that's all he's asking for.
Right, I hear you, and it's a point well taken. But my question is still largely unanswered. The current position of the former president is, I will not appear before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry unless the DCJ, Raymond Zondo, recuses himself. What I'm asking is there anything that could possibly change the former president's mind, even a ruling perhaps from the Constitutional Court?
Well, look, I did try to answer your question, but maybe didn't hear the answer. The fact that I didn't hear the answer doesn't mean I didn't answer your question.
Well, perhaps answer it as plainly as you can.
Yeah, okay. If you just try and listen with an intention to understand and not to respond. I'm saying President Zuma's position is very clear. He is here. The very important thing for him is justice to be seen to be done. So if there's anything that can be done in order for justice to be seen to be done, he'll cooperate with that. As things stand right now, justice is not seen to be done because what you have, you've got two affidavits on the table, but the owner of the one affidavit wants to rule which of the affidavits is making sense more than the other one. President Zuma is saying that if that kind of a situation, justice is not seen to be done, objectivity and fairness is not seen to be done, and as long as that condition exists, he cannot see himself participating in that process. But as soon as justice is seen to be done, where you have two affidavits on the table, a third person must rule on these two affidavits. That is the only situation that will get President Zuma to say justice is seen to be done.
All right, let's move on then if we can. Of course, there was all kinds of commentary when you announced a couple of years ago that you've decided to part ways with the African National Congress, ATM, which was the first time for a lot of people that they heard about the organization, even though its existence predates the announcement you made. Around that time, you said something to the effect of, ATM is a tsunami that is about to hit South Africa. That was in 2019. Do you still believe that?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I think the ATM was sabotaged. There was that apostle that came from the ATM ranks that came and lied to South Africa and said ATM would be deregistered. And that dissuaded a lot of people. And that man has been proved to be wrong. And at the same time, there were all these misguided rumors that ATM was a project of the project of President Zuma, and we had a Ginwala Commission to disprove all of that. And again, I say media, because media is not being fair to South Africa. Media is not informing South Africa that there's a Ginwala report. Media is not putting pressure on the ANC to release the Ginwala report that has cleared Magashule from all the shenanigans he's been accused of in terms of the ATM. And nobody's saying this now because this is now helping ATM. So indeed, ATM is up and about. In fact, ATM will be contesting all the wards in the country. ATM is up and about, will be dealing with the issues of South Africa because it wants to introduce peace in the country. But you do have a spokesperson of the ATM. His name is Spusiso Mncwabe. And I think if you want to know more about the ATM, you must speak to Spusiso Mncwabe. He's representing the ATM. I'm here for President Zuma, but I just had to mention in passing that ATM is here to stay. ATM wants to govern this country, as it were, but Mncwabe can talk to you more about that.
Absolutely. The reason why I speak about ATM is, as I've mentioned before, for many people, the organization even came to their knowledge when you announced that you were joining them. So if you're allowed to indulge us a bit more, I'd really appreciate it. The other often asked question after you've announced that you're going to speak for the former president as well is this notion of a possible conflict of interest. The thinking here, of course, is that the former president is very closely associated with the ANC. A lot of what has put him in the news cycle has to do with the ANC. But you also have a very clear affiliation to ATM and spoke out very boldly against the ANC. Help us navigate, perhaps as a professional, how you're navigating the perceptions that may come about from this new role you've taken.
It's very easy. I take my cue from the judges of this country. As long as the judges of this country have a right to vote, it means the judges of this country have got a particular political preference. Now, if I'm a judge in this country and my preference is the DA as an example, does that mean that when I have to rule on a case involving ANC member against the DA, that I'm going to be biased in favor of the DA? And the answer must be a categoric no. So that's exactly where I am. I'm sitting exactly where the judges are sitting. Judges vote. And as long as the judges vote, it means that judges can be professionals that can conduct the matters of the judiciary in a manner that is fair and consistent despite their political preferences. Why am I denied the right that the judges are given? If judges can do it, why can't I do it?
And it's on that note that we're going to have to leave it. Mzwanele Manyi, I've thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. Thanks very much indeed for your indulgence as we help South Africans better understand these developments. Mzwanele Manyi is the new spokesperson for former President Jacob Zuma. You may have, of course, also come across his name as the former head of GCIS.